It's only fair.
I'll smoke.
I'd like to call the Maumelle City Council meeting to order. The first order of business is invocation and pledge of allegiance, and I'm going to lead us in that tonight. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this day, Lord, and we're thankful for the many blessings that you've bestowed upon us and upon our city, Lord. We'd ask you to be with us here tonight as we make decisions that will affect the city, Lord. We ask you to help us to do them wisely, Lord, and we'd ask that you be with us as we conduct our meeting in a respectful manner. We also ask that you'd be with our first responders, Lord, that serve our city on a daily basis, Lord. I ask you to watch over them and keep them safe and protect them. We also ask that you be with our servicemen and women that are serving our country, Lord, to protect our rights, Lord, and be with their families that they're separated from and comfort them as only you can. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I have no special guests or announcements tonight. Next item is the approval of the minutes of August 20th regular meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Before we move on with that, I haven't heard from Councilmember Mosley, and I don't know if he said anything to anybody at the last meeting since I didn't attend, but,
No.
Okay, all right.
Might be one of my moves.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the August 20th, approve the minutes of the August 20th regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes or any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is public comment, and I have no public comment cards tonight on an agenda item or not on an agenda item. Next item is financial statement review, and that's done at the second meeting of the month, so that will be at our next meeting. Department reports, because of the length of this agenda tonight, I felt it would be better if we didn't do any department reports, so I didn't ask anybody to be here tonight to do that, since we have a lot of items on the council agenda. Next item is a procedural motion. I need a motion from the floor that we read all resolutions and ordinances by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to read all resolutions and ordinances by title only. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is unfinished business. We have the second reading of ordinance number 960, accepting dedication of streets and drainage. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 960, an ordinance accepting and confirming the dedication of certain streets and drainage in Carnahan Village subdivision upon the fulfillment of certain contingencies and for other purposes.
Okay, if there's no comments on ordinance number 960, that will be on second reading, or third reading at the next meeting. Councilmember Vapurzian?
I noticed that it said something that was going to exclude the lakes, the retention ponds. Is that common? I've not paid attention to it perhaps before, and maybe it is common.
Well, part of the problem is one of the detention ponds is actually on a separate lot that's not part of the subdivision. I think that's going to be part of that, but the property owner did not choose to do that
Okay.
either, so.
I didn't know if that was common or if that happened on occasion, or,
Goes either way.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Okay.
So it's not extremely rare nor
Yeah.
overly common.
okay.
Residential subdivisions, residential subdivisions, we sometimes take them over for maintenance.
Right.
Commercial, we don't. So,
Okay.
so there's, depending on what it was, but one of these is on a commercial lot. So
Okay.
that's kind of how it fell on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds like a politician.
Sounds like an attorney, but yeah.
He ought to be running for office.
Make me blush.
All right. Is there any other discussion on ordinance number 960? Okay, that will be on third reading at the next meeting. Next item is first reading of ordinance number 961 as amended, establishing street limits. So this was on first reading at the last meeting. It has been amended, and now it's going back to first reading because of the changes that were made. Madam City Clerk, if you read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 961, an ordinance declaring the speed limit in residential rear access alleys. Alleys.
I'm sorry, I had a question.
Councilmember Vapurzian, I didn't know which one came on first.
Well, that's okay. I was just gonna ask, I have not spoken with Chief about this, I suppose I should have. Is this something that Chief Williams is in agreement whether or not they can enforce or have somebody sitting in the alleyways? I just didn't know if you'd spoken to him or anybody had spoken to him or city attorney had spoken to him or,
I have not discussed this with
okay.
Chief.
Well, I can discuss it with him. It just,
Okay.
we have several readings left, so I just
Right.
wanted to make sure that those who enforce this are good with it.
He spoke to that last meeting, too.
He
so-
did, he did.
We're talking
Yeah, we're talking about the alleys. I guess the question was, could it be enforced? Is that your question?
Well,
Councilmember
it's
Vapurzian?
very difficult to enforce an alley, but I mean, the fact that it's in place is as important as anything. I mean, having a patrol car sit in an alleyway is somewhat unproductive, I suppose, but they can take care of this. But I just wanted to make sure that those who enforce the law are in agreement with the law,
Or proposed law.
or the proposed law. Thank you. Yes, sir. And we don't have to discuss it now, but
Trying to figure out.
I
Chief
just
wants
wanted to see,
answer.
I wanted to see a smiling face, really. Would you care? Yeah, we want to hear you say
Yeah.
something. The proposal is for the residential rear access alleys to be a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Right. And as everybody knows, and it varies, but we're going to give some leeway. There's got to be some tolerance. I mean, nobody wants going 11 miles in a 10-mile zone. I mean, that doesn't make anybody feel good about their police department or their city. So, that has to be taken into account. Quite frankly, I still feel like probably the unsafe driving ordinances and the careless and prohibited driving ordinances are really pretty much tailor-made for situations like this, where an officer can testify of what he saw, what the circumstances were, what the conditions were, and what led him to write a citation for that. I think that is something that I could, I could see if the officer was testifying accurately and made the case. I think a judge would probably rather see that, and I mean, than going 11 miles an hour in a 10-mile-an-hour zone or something like that. So personally, I think we do have ways to address this already on the books, and if we do see a problem, and as I said earlier, I think sometimes the most direct way is the easiest way. If we see somebody or hear of somebody doing something like that, and we can pinpoint where they are, just go and ask them to take everybody and everything into consideration while driving down an alley. There are certain things that make a unsafe driving situation more than others. Going relatively quickly through Lake Willistine might be worth pulling somebody over and asking them to knock that off. Throw in a busload of kids in that park and running around, and then somebody doing the exact same thing, that might take it up a notch or two. So I think that one of the things that we like about the Maumelle Police Department is the discretion that we give its officers in determining what they're seeing and the best remedy for addressing that. And there's not a cookie cutter response to everything, and I personally like that a lot.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. I've got a bunch of lights on here. I don't know if they're just making statements or if they're for you, but Councilmember Scott?
We talked about doing a speed study. Has that been done yet?
I'm not
Not
aware.
been done. That, y'all asked me to schedule that, and by the time when I looked at the video, it was gonna be a holiday weekend, and I didn't want to run it through a holiday weekend. Since it went back on first reading, we had plenty of time to
Got
do it.
plenty of time. Okay.
So, yeah. So the speed study has not been done. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. And really, I had a question for Councilmember Holt, but I do have a question for you, Chief. We have unsafe driving regulations. If a person's going 20 or 25 miles an hour down one of these rear alleys, would a policeman stop them for that as unsafe?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And especially at that speed, we would stop to see why he's going that fast down an alley too. That would just be good police work.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, sir, we would stop that. Yes, sir.
Okay. If there's anything else for him, I was going to address Councilmember Holt.
Okay.
Councilmember Holt, last meeting you stated that you had two people come and talk to you about this situation, and you thought that one of them had indicated to you that they felt like it was a driver that was a relative of somebody that lived there. Is that right?
They did not come to me. I was knocking on doors to get signatures for my, to run for council member. So we were just having a conversation about the neighborhood and the alleyways, et cetera. For me, this is sort of like chewing a piece of meat. The longer you chew it, the bigger it gets.
Yeah.
It really was not intended to enforce a law and have a policeman wasting their time sitting there. It was something to do to sort of discourage maybe people and be aware of it to possibly slow their speed down a little bit. You know, after a while it gets so preposterous that you wish you'd never mentioned it to begin with. Because this is not about me. It is about the people of the city of Maumelle. And if we don't respond in some way, gently, kindly, in some way to support them, it's okay if we don't do anything, ladies and gentlemen. I just think I had talked with our department head from Public Works. I asked him about painting the signs on the concrete on the street like we did over there in Garden Oaks. And would that not be a whole lot less expensive than putting up a sign someplace that nobody's going to read anyway? So he said, and I also talked with the mayor as soon as he got back from Washington, and I drew him a little map as to where he might put a speed trap, because it's that straight line from the very front to the very back. The others are too short. It isn't. We don't want to turn Maumelle into a prison camp where you have to get permission before you go around the block or anything. It's just a casual, low-key idea. Can we do something to maybe, yes, they did say that they thought it was visitors or relatives of somebody else. The residents themselves, I think, respected it. So that's all it was, really. It isn't that big of a deal.
To your knowledge, has anyone talked to either the driver or the relative that the driver that was visiting,
Well,
or
I think most
just
people
talked
are
to
sort
him?
of afraid to accost someone else. I mean, they'd rather just stay out of it. You know, the comment was that there's people visiting out there. People are walking their dogs. People are walking their children. And there's children playing in that alleyway where they couldn't before. And they felt like that if someone was being a little careless, talking on their phone or dealing with their phone, they might not see them out there until it was too late. So that really was, as much as the speeding, it was probably the careless driving.
Okay. Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've addressed a lot of what I was going to say tonight through the comments from our chief and from what was said between two councilmen, that this is an idea that was coming before us that that we might need to address, but I think this has already been addressed, as was said by our chief, that we already have careless and unsafe and prohibitive driving that will cover any kind of infractions that might happen in that area. And I just think it's kind of a problem that's looking for a solution, or a solution looking for a problem. So right now, I don't think I could support doing more legislation that's unnecessary. I think it's well addressed with the, what we have on the books right so far, and if we do continue and do the study, that will probably warrant us to have more presence for the police in that area. But I still don't think that would warrant us adding another ordinance. So I think that would be the more prudent way for us to go, is just to kind of let's see if what we have on the books really works better than trying to add more legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Holt?
Well, I think I've already had my say. You know, I believe that, I can't remember how long it's been. It seems to me that we had a discussion about, we passed an ordinance, something about our jogging trails, and I don't remember if it had related to non-smoking or what it was, and I believe the same issue came up then. Can we enforce it? You know, that kind of thing, or what do we do about the cigarette butts and all that kind of stuff? I agree with all that. I agree with all of it. It really, if it would be better, Mr. Mayor, I'll withdraw my request for the ordinance. There's no sense in us wasting council time. You know, we had the budget. The man from our city audit came and stood before us and gave us the entire audit, and we did not ask a question about it. The bond people came, Stevens Company came, and we talked about we didn't talk about it, a $15,595,000 bond issue. We did not raise a single question. And when I was at the Planning Commission meeting, the person who was the coordinator or came to our council, he made the point that it was really quite a long discussion about our alleyways and the speed limit. So it's okay. I mean, it really is. We're wasting our time, and I would rather move on, Mr. Mayor.
So are you making a motion to withdraw or table ordinance number 961?
I do.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to withdraw ordinance number 961. Is that a roll call? Sure.
Better safe than sorry.
Okay, all right. Madam City Clerk, or is there any discussion on that motion?
I would like to see the speed study, just for,
Oh, yeah.
I think that'd be awesome.
All right.
I think the
And
numbers
let me say something. This all came about because Councilmember Holt asked us to put a speed limit down on the alleys. We don't have a speed limit to put on the alleys, so I can't place any signage out there with a speed limit on it. So I just want that very clear, so.
It's fine. Still
Okay.
like to see you sleep to.
Well, you can fill out a card, yes, sir, but, yeah,
Did we hear from John Todd?
okay.
I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Todd.
Councilmember Vipers wants to hear from you.
In our codes, we have a speed limit set for each category street: minor arterial, major arterial, residential. When the Planning Commission, and I was pushing this because Alice and I don't get along real well. I lived in your ward first, so I know all about them. And I wanted a class of street so that a developer could not come into a subdivision and just put in whatever he wants and says, I want to give this to the POA for the residents to maintain. Okay, so we created Class 6 street, which has smaller setbacks, narrower, but it's still something that the mayor agreed that he would accept for dedication because it was built to a standard, not the way that most people that build subdivisions do, as inexpensively as possible. So for all these other categories of streets, we have a set speed limit. I failed to follow up and amend the second section of code that addresses speed limits. So if you don't do this and a developer comes in and he puts in an alleyway, there's no speed limit. So just think about that. Not what the speed limit is over in Rolling Oaks, because it wouldn't qualify, not what the speed limit is over in the Country Club of Arkansas, because those are private, it wouldn't qualify. They would be covered by what the chief was talking about, people driving crazy. Okay, so, but if any new alley is put in, you have no standard. And forgive me, I didn't follow up, and I didn't even think about it until Council Holt comes up and says this, and then Caleb and I get to looking at it, and we put it in the code, but we didn't add the second section that sets a speed limit for Class 6 streets. So, you know, this is not for one particular neighborhood. This is something in the future. And that's all I got.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Commissioner Todd. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Todd, and I'm not arguing with you, but a Class 6 residential street has a speed limit of 25 miles an hour on it.
No, it doesn't. Because we put, well, okay, is it 25 miles
It's
an hour?
25. I've got it right here.
Well, 25 miles an hour would be the speed limit on any new alleyway. Is that smart?
Depends on the alleyway.
No, but I'm probably just thinking out loud. I just got through asking the chief if they were driving 20 or 25 miles an hour, how would his officers react? And he said they'd probably attack the guy.
No, that's not what he said.
Tase him.
Well, you know,
But again, we're not talking about today.
Bodies were in the trunk,
And
yeah.
since this ordinance has gone in, developers have not put any alleyways in. So it may be a non-thing. Matter of fact, a couple of them took their alleyways out. So, you know, just remember that it's 25 miles an hour and they build a new city streets, and that's too fast because it's only 20 foot back-to-back curb. It's not a very wide street at 25 miles an hour. Did that answer your question, or did it make it more confusing?
Yeah, confused everybody.
well, I'm still confused, but I stay that way according to my wife, so.
Well, but what John is saying, in section 54105, Maumelle City Code provides that the recommended speed limits of residential rear access alleys is 10 miles per hour, but there is no speed limit when you get in chapter 82 where it talks about traffic and vehicles. So that's the problem, is that, like I say, if this doesn't pass, then we can't put a speed limit sign out there in my mind because there is no speed limit.
And that's in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Todd.
All right, if there's no other discussion on the motion to withdraw ordinance number 961, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Saunders,
Does yes mean I want to do away with it or not?
Yes is
Yes is to withdraw this ordinance.
Okay, no.
Councilmember Williams,
You're jumping from,
Yeah, she's
I don't think so, no.
Councilmember Scott,
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian.
No.
Councilmember Holt,
No.
Councilmember Timmons,
no.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
5 noes.
Okay. It'll be on second reading at the next meeting. All right, next item, we need to convene the Board of Sign Appeals. So I need a motion from the council to recess the city council meeting and to convene the Board of Sign Appeals.
So offered.
Second.
We have a motion second to recess the council meeting and convene the Board of Sign Appeals. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, the Board of Sign Appeals is now in order. And I gave y'all the information in your packet that basically the city council shall by virtue of their office constitute a Board of Sign Appeals. So that's why you sit as the Board of Sign Appeals. And part of it is to hear requests for variances from the literal provisions of this chapter, and it's referring to chapter 58, section 58, for the erection of new sign in instances where strict enforcement of this chapter would cause practical difficulties due to circumstances unique to the individual sign under consideration, and grant such variances only when it is demonstrated that such action will be keeping with the spirit and intent of this chapter. What has happened is the Maumelle Charter, well, Academics Plus Charter Schools applied for a sign permit, and it was denied by Mr. Morley because LED digital reader boards are not allowed per our code. So he had no choice but to deny it. Now, Mr. Morley is not here. Mr. Morley is out of state on vacation, so he's not here to speak, but he had no choice but to deny it. I mean, it wasn't allowed. So the school and their architects have applied for the variance because that's the only relief they have to come before this board of sign appeals. Not the city council, but the board of sign appeals. And so I've got a question here, but Mr. Vaden is here from Lewis Architects, and Mr. Luke Ribbits is here representing the school in this matter. So, Councilmember Vapurzian.
I like the sign, it's sharp, I think it's gonna add a lot, I like where it's placed. The question I have is for Miss Marion, who's been on the sign committee. We're talking about a variance, how long before you all are at the point where this won't be a variance?
Well, it might always be a variance.
Okay.
The sign committee's been meeting for about 2 years.
Yeah.
We're about a month from finishing the commercial sign ordinance under which this would fall. LED lighted signs have not been allowed. The opinion of the committee to this point, and City Attorney Norris, please remind me of this because he's the one that's been taking all the notes and doing all the minutes, was that another option would be better, because if we allow this sign, then, you know, at what point we've not allowed Walgreens to have one, you know, some other businesses have requested these kinds of signs and we've said no, and this is a variance at this point and would likely be a variance when the sign ordinance is finished. Additionally, I mean, we're like a month away. We've got like one more long meeting and the draft should be finished. We should dot the i's and cross the t's, bring it to the council for approval. This has been discussed at length.
Yes.
I mean, probably of all of the things we've talked about signs, this particular situation has been discussed the most. And it was just a matter of, if you say okay, then when do you say no? And the citizens of Maumelle, at least, in the past, have made it clear that they don't want those kinds of lighted signs. They don't want our city to look like North Little Rock. Even though this is a beautiful sign, it's probably very tastefully done, we understand the need for schools to say, football game this Friday, PTO meeting, last day of school, spring break, you know, all of those kinds of things. But the committee felt that there were other ways of communicating that on a sign without having a lighted LED board that has been so unpalatable to so much of the citizenry. So there's just two comments I'd like to make. One is that I wish Mr. Morley were here because he's been very active in the discussions. And secondly, we're a month away. We're like a month away from this 2-year project.
That's why I'm more inclined to wait till you all finish what you're doing, because you've been working for 2 years on this. And this might or might not be a variance that's needed, but because if you said just for education purposes, not on the boulevard, because nobody wants to go up and down the boulevard and see that.
Yeah,
And
and we have never had an example. I mean,
Correct.
this is brand new for us,
Beautiful.
and we can take this back to the sign committee and say, you know, how about something that's tastefully done like this on a side street, or that we make a, now we do have some exceptions for certain types of signs, like at churches, nonprofit organizations. City Attorney Norris, are you?
And other things.
And other things, you know, so we have, we have made exceptions for various types of entities to have signs that are more conducive to the kinds of things they do.
I just don't want to open a variance yet, personally, that y'all are really close to shutting the door on.
We're so close.
I know, to wait to see where this is gonna end up and how you all find it. That was the purpose of your board.
Yeah, and what I would really love to do is take a sign like this back to the committee and say, this is the kind of thing they're talking about. You know, we're not talking about casino signs, you know. We're talking about something that's tastefully done. One question that I would like to ask is how often would the verbiage change? I mean, would it flash by? Would it be like a constant reader board? Would it, you know, what's the intention there? Because when we were talking about this a lot, we discussed things like, what if it had only a message change every X many minutes or every hour or something like that, so that people weren't annoyed by, you know, a changing sign. If it's just per event or, you know, those kinds of things. So I would like to understand what the intention of the sign would be. So if the gentleman in the audience would like to give us a little more
Well,
information,
wait just a second.
I appreciate that too.
And also, it's more than a month because the committee may come back in a month. It's an ordinance, so it's got to go through 3 readings. So you're talking minimum of 3 council meetings after the committee makes their recommendation. So just want that very clear too. Okay.
I just wanted to explain what a variance is, and we don't hear those a whole lot, but essentially we have a section of code that says you can't have these sort of signs. But the Board of Sign Appeals can grant a variance in specific situations, and it's not for the Board of Sign Appeals to decide whether or not they happen to like the people applying or like that particular sign. The ordinances, as they're written right now, specifically state what needs to occur for a variance to be granted. And because this is an issue that inevitably the board has denied them before for other entities, and it's such that if the next entity comes forward and says, why didn't you grant us a variance, we need to be able to point back to the minutes at this meeting to explain why they did or did not meet the requirements for the variance. So I want to reiterate some of the things that's in the code that y'all were given. But variances are for when strict enforcement of the sign code causes difficulties for a specific sign, and those difficulties are due to circumstances unique to that sign, and a variance can only be granted when you can demonstrate that the variance is in line with the spirit and the intent of the sign code. And so as we're discussing that, the minutes are going to reflect those things that y'all are talking about that touch on these points. And so at the end, if y'all do decide to grant a variance, we need to be able to prove that all 3 of those were the reasons that it happened. And if it turns out that a variance isn't approved, we need to be able to say it's because those weren't the reasons that were there. So I just wanted to give a little bit of framework as we think about this request.
Well, we can lean back on our current ordinance as the reason if we didn't approve it. If we did, we'd have to prove it. But again, my reason for wanting to kind of wait to see what you all come up with, see where we go from, if people start coming back in and saying, why didn't you approve us? Why didn't you approve us? Because if you all in the signboard say this is only for educational purposes or whatever, you know, we don't want Chick-fil-A and Walgreens and Sonic all to have, you know, signs out on the boulevard. So I really want to see what decisions you come back with. I'm done. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson, did you
Yeah,
want
I
to speak now, or do you want to hear from the applicants?
I want to speak now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What City Attorney Norris kind of said, it kind of goes in line with what I wanted to state, in that the reasoning behind us, the city, not wanting to have these types of signs is because not only Do some people find it unattractive? Some people find that if there's so many messages on it that it's flashing all the time and that it creates a nuisance that way. But it also inadvertently creates a light pollution problem. And my caution would be before we decided on a variance in this area, is that there is a residential neighborhood right across the street from that. And that would really, a bright neon light could greatly affect, that area. It's not like it's in an area that's light commercial or commercial that would not be as affected if it was further down, around the corner, where the church and the community center is. But this happens to be right where there is a pretty concentrated residential area. So I want to caution that we think about that when we're deciding if we want to give a variance on this, because the light pollution is something that that has been brought to me in other communities, and how they were so happy that Maumelle does not have these types of signs, because when they go through community whatever, that at night they feel like they're being blinded by the school and the church signs. So that would be my caution when giving this variance, is the actual level of light that this produced. So if there was some way that this could only be on during the day, or it could be greatly dimmed during the night, that would be something that I would be interested in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Scott.
I just wanted to hear one more time what the variance criteria.
Okay, so it should be in your packet. It's section Maumelle City Code, section 58-95.
I'm looking at it.
A2, and I sort of broke it down into bullet points, but I'll reread the section as a whole. The Board of Sign Appeals can, and of course it's right on the page split, can hear requests for variance from the literal provisions of the chapter for the erection of a new sign. When can they do it? They can do it in instances where strict enforcement of the chapter causes practical difficulties. What kind of practical difficulties? Those difficulties are due to the circumstances unique to the individual sign under consideration. You can grant such a variance only when it is demonstrated that such action will be in keeping with the spirit and the intent of this chapter being the sign code. And I want to point out something else y'all have hit. If there's the desire to allow the sign but not the prereq to grant a variance, there's nothing that would prohibit the city council from passing an ordinance specifically allowing that. I just want to sort of let y'all know what the options are there.
Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Norris, that last sentence that you put on there, to create an ordinance, we're right in the middle of rewriting the sign ordinances, as you well know. And I think it would be better for us to wait until after we get through before we would do something like that. Because we're rewriting the ordinances right now.
And that is something that the council can do. I want to speak really on behalf of them. I know that they have brought this issue up a year, 2 years ago. This isn't something that they've just come up with, and they have been waiting for a fair amount of time already. Right? So I just wanted to point that out.
24 months or 26 months,
Or 27.
you're on the side of caution.
I mean, we really need to hear from the applicants,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, y'all are discussing something you hadn't even heard from the applicants yet. All right, so is Mr. Vaden gonna do it, or Mr. Ribbich, or? Okay, all right. If you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
Name's Clayton Vaden. I'm a partner at Lewis Architects and Engineers. First of all, I do want to say thank you for letting me be here, for considering this request for variance to the council members and Mayor Watson. And I want to compliment Jim Morley and Jim Neri, just the relationship that we've had as an office working with them, the staff, and then as our client, working for our client, Academics Plus. I just really feel like everything's gone smooth. I feel like there's a good relationship. I think from where we started to where we are now with the buildings that are there, the improvements we've done, and the ability to be able to work with the city of Maumelle, no complaints here at all, at least from our side. So we're grateful to be in this position and talking about really kind of the last piece. I was talking to Luke a few weeks ago about how I think we've touched every square inch of that property, and now finishing up the turf there I think is a real benefit to the community as well as the school, and they wanted to do that for the school obviously, but then I think the community will benefit from it as well. Just a couple of points of distinction I would make about the sign. Very clear in y'all's comments about being over the top, something really large, flashing all the time, and I don't think that the school ever approached it that way. In fact, in the request for variance letter that was submitted, we talked about 30 minutes after sunset, the sign going off, 30 minutes before sunrise, the sign would come back on. We set the sign perpendicular to the street, so a very good point about flashing into the windows of an apartment. We set it up so it would it would light down the street. We don't have anything. I'm not going to run the sign. I just drew it. I think Luke will discuss how it would be run, but obviously not wanting to be obscene with that. Even the size of the LED sign, I think if you notice the dimensions on that, it would just be tall enough to have about 3 lines of text so that you could announce kind of outstanding achievements of a student, like everything that was discussed, upcoming calendar events, those sorts of things. So I think it's understated, and it's just to give a little more information and the ease of doing that instead of having students or staff walk up the hill to do that there. That's really the intent of wanting the sign. Luke probably will have more specific reasons to do it, but I appreciate y'all hearing the variance and taking it under consideration, and I'm going to step down and let Luke talk.
Good evening, ladies, honorable ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank you. I want to also echo Clayton's comments about the relationship that we've had with the Planning and Zoning Group as well as with the city at large. I'm before you today as both a citizen. I live at 151 Lily Drive here in town, and have for 20 years almost. But also as the president of the Maumelle Foundation for Education, which is the property owner and improvement function that benefits the school. Okay, I've heard everything that you've said, and certainly we've been engaged in this for 26 months or so. There is a bit of a time crunch on this, and this is the reason that we've kind of advanced our petition and arguments to the point that we're at right now. Our construction, insofar as the turf aspect of the project, was completed this morning. It opened today, so this was the first day of actual utilization of the new athletic and playground facilities, and so. If this matter doesn't get addressed now, our construction team is going to be departing the site, and then we're going to have to pay an additional amount to have them come and establish themselves to do this sign. Okay, so there is a sense of urgency attached to this. With that, in advance of this, and recognizing your time, I do have a prepared statement just to make, and I think you're all in some good. I think you're all going to be able to kind of breathe a sigh of relief insofar as this is concerned. First of all, we are a not-for-profit. The Maumelle Foundation for Education and the school are both 501c3 IRS designated not-for-profits, as well as Arkansas Public Benefit Corporations. Okay, and not unlike the sign board or the Public Facilities Board, et cetera, we are a quasi-governmental agency, not unlike the city. functions. So with that said, I'm going to turn to on my comments and then be glad to address any questions that you have. As citizens, we all want to love where we live. All citizens desire their community to feel like home, to be a place that yields a sense of pride, and to be the type of city we desire to work hard to protect and maintain. We're very sensitive to the culture and values that are unique to Maumelle, Arkansas. As to the efficacy of public education, it is unquestionable that the highest degree of parent-teacher-student engagement we can achieve has a direct effect and is the single best contributor to student outcomes. And yet, attaining an effective level of realized engagement is one of the hardest things that any public activity seeks to do. The use of outdoor signage is one of the world's oldest and most effective forms of community engagement. That said, this timeless medium is undergoing rapid change as new technologies diffuse into a modern media industry. This very entity, the City Council, the City of Maumelle, recognize the value of the community engagement in its communications via the use of outdoor signs, and it deploys banners, traditional monument signs, iconography, and electronic billboards across the city to draw its citizens and visitors into greater involvement. Increasing the effectiveness of engagement are the very digital content distribution opportunities, which represent a dynamic and easily deployable means of providing updates to our constituents and to the community at large, even when we're situated remotely due to the convenience interest of internet communications. Case in point, Maumelle's own police department utilizes digital content distribution mediums to disseminate details about crimes and suspects, to advance public interest, and to preserve public safety. We seek the same opportunity to leverage these technologies to disseminate data about such benevolent undertakings as our students' volunteer opportunities, school weather closures, emergency situations, vocational and athletic events, and to celebrate our students' and staff successes while rallying community support. Yet we, in our position, are being restricted in our efforts to affect commerce in our own unique way and methods by this ordinance's restriction on our use of digital medium in our outside communications. As a public charity and benefiting public K-12 charter school, we are inspired by the creative ways that smart and forward-looking communities across the United States are connecting with their residents through modern opportunities presented by this timeless, valuable medium. We seek to advance our mission and the value we bring to the education process through enhanced engagement with our students, parents, faculty, and the broader community by means of these modern outside communications, using our own creative in a similar fashion as the city is currently using and exploiting in its use of the digital board at Highway 100 and the center of town. The city of Maumelle and its voters sounded the alarm in 1999 and demanded local quality education options. An outcome of that community action has been the establishment of our very school. Over the years, city leaders have alleged and demonstrated their support quite vocally for our activities, largely because they represented an investment in the community in terms of education, real estate, and improvements. And our investments have paid dividends. In the last 8 years, we have provided more than $30 million worth of new state-of-the-art K-12 campus facilities with a plurality of academic, athletic, scientific, and arts education and practice facilities. The most recent of which, as I said earlier, opened this very day. And the primary effect of these contributions, one far greater than the enhancements to local property values, has been to provide a place of high student performance and employee enjoyment in their workplace, in spite of the fact that the school engages with but a fraction of the constituents we serve. This is not due to a failure on the part of technology or a particular medium as much as it is inconvenience. That is to say that effective communication and content delivery needs are as diverse as the community we serve. The fact of the matter is that some folks just don't do text, email, flyers to the house, through the students, etc. No matter what you do, you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink. So we have to find ways to engage with these important constituencies to advance our mission for student performance in whatever way we can. On behalf of the Maumelle Foundation for Education and as a parent and citizen of the city, I'm asking, as a parent of in the school and as a citizen of this city, I'm asking this body to approve our plans for a monument sign design, which incorporates digital billboard technology. We are glad to negotiate certain limits into the use of our board's communications in such a way that is respectful of our neighbors and our city's values and traditions, such as prohibiting any playing of multi-frame video type animations or placing the sign into a sleep mode from 30 minutes post-sunset until 30 minutes pre-sunrise, as an example. We understand that the city's impaneled board charged to bring the city laws in line with federal law regarding signage ordinances is currently looking at existing frameworks and laws, and we are confident that the methods and apparatus of our design and the proposed operating activities of these equipment comport with these laws, including interstate commerce, and do not conflict with any aspect of law that the city must comport with. Thank you for your time and attention and approval of our request.
Thank you, Mr. Ribbits. I've got a couple of lights on here, but I don't know if they're questions or they statements, so.
Just a,
Councilmember Vapurzian?
mine was a statement.
Oh.
For y'all's, because I had to take a picture of this and blow it up because my eyes wouldn't read it. This is a 10-foot tall sign. This ceiling is 8.5 at best in here. So this is a 10-foot tall sign. It's as high as a basketball goal, and it's 11 foot long. This is not a small sign. So whatever I was thinking previously when I finally read the stats on that, this is a very, very large sign. That causes me as much concern as anything. If it had been considerably smaller, but this is a huge sign. I don't know that we have a sign in Maumelle that's 10 foot tall from the ground to the top.
So, Mr.
Yes, go
Mr.
ahead.
Vapurzian,
Yes.
what I would tell you is that that drawing is notional and that there is not a specific part number attached to that.
I'm just going by the plans that are in front
Yeah,
of me.
please,
So
come on
I'm
up.
just-
Can I respond?
Yes, please do.
Okay. The monument part of this sign, the size you're talking about, has been submitted, and it does meet, it has been approved as a monument sign
Okay.
through Jim Morley. The part that we're discussing is just the LED sign, which is, I don't have the dimensions.
A little bit by 2 foot by
2
7
foot,
foot.
that's right. So they did approve the sign when it was a,
The physical construction.
Okay,
and they approved it to be a backlit acrylic sign in place of where the LED portion is. So
okay.
And that, the LED portion is not nearly that large.
Right, right. I just didn't, I was unaware of the sign size itself. That's, we don't, Mr. Neri, do you know if we have a sign that large in the city?
Right off the top of my head, no, sir, I can't think of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions for Mr. Ribbits?
Yeah, there's one more.
Okay.
So the argument was that you guys are gonna go away and have to come back. If you've already got approval for the sign, why not build the sign and leave the electrical there and bring the electricians back if the variance gets approved?
So we've plumbed to the electrical to the footings.
Yes, sir.
We are not going to authorize the additional expenditure to build that in absence of that LED board.
Okay.
And so just like you wouldn't spend money that you are not going to be able to enjoy, we're not going to spend money that we can't enjoy because, like you, we are dealing with public money.
Okay, thank you.
Reason.
As I said, we are just seeking the same enjoyment of communications medium that the city itself is enjoying.
Councilmember Scott?
Sir, the plumbing that you've done to the sign, you'd need that for the backlighting anyway, wouldn't you?
So the backlighting.
A
the-
backlit sign?
So the board itself is kind of like an LED monitor attached to a laptop. So there is no backlighting per se, is the sign is intrinsically illuminated.
Yeah.
Mr. Vaden just said that you've already got a backlit sign approved, an acrylic backlit sign approved. Is that not correct, Mr. Vaden?
We originally submitted it that way, and then we came back and submitted it with a LED sign shown, and that was denied. And so then we came back through and submitted the variance for request. So yes, my point was the size and the dimension of everything went through and was passed through your sign ordinance.
But I think the question was, if the LED wasn't granted, you would still have electricity going to the sign to
Power would
backlit
be
it,
there.
or at least illuminate it in some manner, I would think.
Correct. The schools board, which I am not a member of at this point, does not desire to spend the resources to facilitate the foundation's erection of this monument sign in absence thereof, this digital board. Okay? So they want the ability, the purpose of this sign is to communicate with the public, and to do so in a way that doesn't artificially increase the workloads of the staff.
Okay. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. You currently have a sign, don't you?
We have an old sign that we've had up there for several years. Yes, sir.
So you're upgrading for several reasons, aesthetics, whatever, to match the new buildings and whatever.
To be honest, the current sign was always a temporary apparatus installed by the school's PTO.
I guess the point I'm making, I'm not trying to be mean, but we do have some signage there for the public, and apparently has been effective for some number of years.
Insufficient, I think, is the better word.
Or perspective. I'm still going to go back to the same thing. I cannot support this. We are in the middle of rewriting our sign ordinances right now. We need at least one more long meeting to finish that up, and then maybe approach this again. So there's no way I can support this at this time.
Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question for City Attorney Norris. If we decided to bring forth a variance, can we construct it in the manner of asking for the sunset clause and the sunrise clause and that kind of thing? Is that appropriate, or is that just something that? It seems like you said in the variance you don't want to make it.
Sure. So in 58-95, that
Yeah,
same
right.
section that gave jurisdiction, subsection B says the board, y'all, may impose reasonable conditions in granting the variance to ensure compliance and protect the adjacent property. So if what you're talking about is conditions that say it may be lit from a certain amount of time, yes, the only thing I'd say is if that's what y'all choose to do, let's be very specific in the language of the motion being made, because
Right.
that'll be the record. But yes,
Which would
to answer your question.
fall right in line with the suggestion that was made by Mr. Rich. The 30 minutes post and the 30-minute pre.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Scott?
I really, really like Luke. He is a good man, and I consider him a friend, and so this is just very difficult for me. But given the criteria under which a variance is granted at this point, with the ordinance written in the language that it's written in today, this doesn't meet the criteria for providing a variance.
I don't.
How does
don't
it?
know. May
Yeah,
I-
it's like, how does it cause practical difficulties? You know.
Sure, I'm glad to speak to
Yeah,
that.
and how is it unique to that sign? And it must stay within the spirit and intent of the existing ordinance. Now, the new ordinance might give you some latitude, but this ordinance doesn't. But
Pretty specific.
Yeah, I wish you would, please.
Yeah,
More
so
information.
practically, the operation of the current signage that we have there is not unlike the gas station. You know, you see them out there with the little pole and whatnot. And that has, with our headquarters now being adjacent to City Hall now, our district offices, and the school being pushed out further, having to transition across two adjacent properties that are not part of the school's ownership, and then obviously having to lug all the gear up the hill and back down, is just an impractical use of time and so forth. The signage that we have identified allows the school administration to approve the editorial content that would go on there and push it through the internet. So it's not like you're going out there and hooking up to it and trying to program the board. It can also be done with, remotely, so the school administration can send a sign when they decide to call the TV stations and cancel school or whatever. We can update things of that nature in that way, or so forth.
Okay. There any questions for Mr. Ribbich? Not, I need somebody to make a motion.
Motion to approve.
Well, motion to approve, but as the city attorney said earlier, you need to expound on.
Well, if there's going to be conditions, if it's just a general motion to grant the variance as submitted, that would be.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't probably do the motion to approve because I'm not going to vote for it. So I'll let somebody else do that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance under the conditions that were set by, I forget the name of your entity.
Maumelle Foundation for
Thank
Education.
You. With the 30-minute post sundown clause and the 30-minute pre-sunrise clause for the digital version of the sign. Is that enough?
And the flashing and.
Oh, yeah, and no, I'm sorry.
Video animation.
Video animation.
What do you mean by
Oh,
video animation?
Okay.
Multi-frame,
Multi-frame video animation.
so live action type cartoons or video images, things of that nature.
Things.
And
How often?
limited.
How often do you
Limited
change
display
it?
change.
Yeah, I mean, what?
I mean, it's just. there's-
If it helps the board in their craft of the motion, I'm glad to support whatever follow-on discussions are necessary to work through that language with you.
All right. Do we have a second then?
I'm not satisfied with the motion at this point. I don't think it's complete enough.
Okay.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I mean, there are just so many things that we haven't touched on, like the brightness measured in lumens, how often the verbiage is going to be changed, the video animation. I mean, there are just the lighting time frame criteria. There are just several things, and I don't think, you did a good job, but I just don't think we've covered.
I don't know that you can. It's kind of a.
It is.
I mean,
It's very difficult.
what you could-
Subject to conditions to be negotiated in good faith between the city and the Maumelle Foundation for Education.
I was gonna say we can't do that in a motion, but
Some of the things that we've taught, so y'all are getting a glimpse at why the sign code
Right.
takes forever.
that's why it took a year. 2
As
years.
we've looked at, if I may, some of the things we've looked at as we've discussed electric or LED billboards or flashing lights deals with the lumens, the brightness, which maybe decreases in importance if it's a daytime only board, but fluctuating, blinking, flashing versus static text. There's roll text. There's a whole bunch of different things that affect how people view it and how much it interferes with other people. And I think some of those were some of the factors that we've discussed regarding LED lights. Was there anything else
No,
that comes to mind?
I was trying to capture it all, because if it has to be in the motion, then we need to capture the essence of those discussions.
Well, we talked about colors too,
Yeah.
multicolors.
I have a question, can I, of the sign committee
All right,
members?
we don't have a second on the motion yet, so, all right, so it dies. Councilmember Williams?
So, you sign committee members, is all of that discussed in the new ordinance? All all that criteria that you just mentioned, is it in the new ordinance or is that the next long meeting?
Well,
Have y'all already discussed that?
if I may, we've discussed it
I know
way
you
more
have.
than I'd like.
Ad nauseam.
And I want to be clear, it appears as though the recommendation to the city council, the draft ordinance that will be proposed, will not allow this in any form and will actually repeal the city's right to do so also. So for those that don't know, there's an exception. The city council granted the city a variance permanently, bad language. And so that the sign that the city uses is the one down at the corner of Millwood and the Boulevard. The proposed ordinance will be removing that and eliminating it. So some of the blinking, flashing comes up in other contexts, but not in regards to LED or alternating text display boards. Because it appears as though it's going to be recommended to not allow those.
So if he comes back later with his variance request,
We'd have this same discussion
we'd have the same
again,
discussion again? Okay.
if the ordinance
So,
passes.
and as you just said, with the city having, eliminating the city sign, if he goes ahead and puts his up, that one will be eliminated with the new ordinance as well.
No, it would be grandfathered. The city's sign would be grandfathered too, but we now know that that building is no longer, there's not city services inside, and so we anticipate that sign going away.
Just by,
And the city could.
So if someone had a sign that it would be called a non-conforming sign, and we have certain provisions in the sign code that allow non-conforming signs. So if the variance was granted and it's up until, I think it was destroyed or they try and amend it.
Try to renovate it.
Yeah.
Councilmember Timmons?
Luke,
Yes, ma'am.
I really appreciate the time you've put in. Last time I was there at the meeting, you got a 10-year service award for your members, officer, board, and trustees. And thank you. You guys have done a wonderful job with that school. With that being said, there's no way right now. We had a committee that's been working on a sign committee that's been working on this for 2 years.
Since we filed our original request, actually.
yeah.
For 2 years.
Yes.
So there's no.
Patience is something that we're good at around Humans Plus.
I know the feeling.
whether you like it or not.
There's no way that I could vote on this right now until it's gone through that sign committee that, spent 4 or 5 hours last couple weeks ago, and they have another 4 or 5 hours to go. And to you, it's not rushing it, but to me, it would be. I want to make sure that we've turned down so many other people also. And that's why, that was the purpose of having that sign committee, so we can do what the residents want and what's right for the city. But thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To move this forward, is it prudent to make a motion to table this till we're able to complete the sign ordinance committee, or do we need to just do a yes or no vote?
Do you have a preference on that, Mr. Rivich?
I think the Maumelle Foundation for Education, we would be menial to tabling it until such time that the new ordinance has been established and reconvene at that time.
If I may, from the Board of Sign Appeals, that we have an applicant who's appealed something, and they're entitled to a decision on that right now. Presumably, if they were to apply again in the future, maybe after the new ordinance and that was to be denied again, they could then appeal that. But unless they withdraw the appeal, it's incumbent upon the board to respond to that request
In order to move forward, then I do still make another motion to accept the variance as requested.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the variance as requested. And we have a second on that. Is there a discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying yes. All opposed, say no.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully within another couple of months, we will have another sign ordinance, so, yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn the Board of Sign Appeals
Second.
And reconvene the city council.
and reconvene the city council meeting.
We have
Second that.
a motion and second to adjourn the Board of Sign Appeals and reconvene the city council meeting. Is there a discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. City council, or the Board of Sign Appeals is adjourned, and the city council is back in session. Moving on to new business, we have Civil Service Commission appointments, or one appointment, I'm sorry. Civil Service Commission appointment. We have two applicants tonight here. We have Ms. Joanna McFadden, and then we have Mr. John Wells. And what is typically done when we do appointments to boards such as this, we ask the applicants to step to the other room so that they don't have the privilege of hearing the questions that the previous applicants can hear. So at this time, we'd ask Mr. Wells, if you would, go with Mr. Stowe, and he'll take you to the room, to the blue room now. And it's a request. I can't force you to do it, but we'd appreciate it if you would. But yeah, okay. And
See how that went.
and I'm just going in the order that they're on the sheet here. So, Ms. McFadden, if you want to come forward and just, the council has a copy of your resume, but if you want to just tell them a little bit about yourself again, and then you can do that, and then they'll probably have some questions for you. And state your name and address for the record too, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joanna McFadden, and I reside at 176 DeVille Drive here in Maumelle. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm currently employed by the Arkansas Department of Transportation, and I serve as their Equal Employment Opportunity Section Head, and our section is considered to be the Civil Rights Section. So we are responsible for everything to ensure that there are no discriminatory practices in both our internal and external programs. Prior to that, I worked for Pathfinder, Inc. in Jacksonville, Arkansas. I was their Human Resources Director, and in that role, I was responsible for all areas of human resources. This included employment, recruitment, compensation, employee relations, just to name a few. And before then, I was employed with Baptist Health. I was the only full-time employee relations specialist for staff at the time of 8,000. So I dealt with a little bit of everything. I dealt with employee complaints, which included racial discrimination, grievances, allegations of sexual harassment, and those types of things. I possess a Bachelor's of Business Administration with an emphasis in human resources and a MBA, both from ULR. I also have 2 nationally recognized HR certifications, one which is the PHR, which stands for Professional in Human Resources, and the other is the SHRM CP, which is the Society of Human Resources Management Certified Professional. Since I was just 20 years old, I have been fortunate enough to work in a field that I love, and that field is human resources. Maumelle is the place that my husband and I have chosen to call home, and it would be both a privilege and an honor to be able to give the gift that I use every day back to my community. And I'm open for questions. Councilmember Timmons did give both Mr. Wells and I a question. I don't know if it would be best for me to answer that question now or hear from others. Okay. And I'll read the question. I'm not sure if others have seen that question. The question reads, what do you think that your greatest challenge will be while working on Maumelle's Civil Service Commission? I think this will be a challenge for anyone, what I'm about to mention. I think the biggest challenge is whenever you come in and you're an outsider, and it's natural for people to have walls up because they don't know who you are. One of the things that I have been able to do at all organizations that I have worked with, I've been able to chisel down those barriers. A lot of times people think, this is a young woman, what can she know? One of the things that I have prided myself on is, yes, I did move up pretty quickly in the field of HR, but I know what it's like to be the file clerk person. I've been in the file room and getting dizzy from all the files. I've been the front desk person that's had to deal with those people that were irate. I've dealt with people when they've lost loved ones. I've dealt with people when they have gone through layoffs. All of those things, I feel, has allowed me to build great working relationships everywhere that I go. And so I would just love the opportunity to be able to not only work with the other commissioners, but both with the fire department and the police department as well.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for applying, Ms. McFadden. Just in the interest of, I have 2 questions for you, and I generally in appointments always ask these same questions. I will be asking the same 2 questions to the other person, fairness and equity. Can you tell me in the last 2 years how many civil service meetings you've attended here in Maumelle?
Yes, sir. I have not attended any meetings. Okay. But since I was here the last time, I have continued to go online and watch the videos and follow the agenda minutes.
Okay, well, that's good. Second question, can you describe the requirements of the position that you're seeking?
Yes.
What will you be doing?
If appointed, what I will be doing as a Civil Service Commissioner is ensuring that there is equity as it relates to promotions, firings, and any other disciplinary actions as it relates to our police department as well as our fire department.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all, Mary.
Timmons, I know you had the question already and you had your light on earlier, but.
Yeah, that was, I didn't know whether she was gonna read it. I did give both of them the same question.
Okay.
So they could give me intelligent answers.
I appreciate that.
There any other questions for Ms. McFadden? Councilmember Williams?
I have just one. Do you, I looked through your resume and it's very impressive.
Thank you.
But as far as experience in mitigating conflicts between management and employees, can you touch on that just a little bit? Your experience, your personal experience in having to deal with that?
Yes, ma'am. I'll just speak to where I am currently. Currently, I work for the Arkansas Department of Transportation, and the position that I am, I report directly to the director. And so there is a lot of responsibility that he has given to me. As you know, the highway department is a very, very busy place. He has allowed me to work independently, and I work with all of our division heads. We have some division heads who it can be very challenging to work with them. But what I do is I always make time to sit down across the table from them and visit with them about the various conflicts that may come up. One of the things that has been on the rise is we've had to deal with a lot of issues as it relates to sexual harassment. And that's one of those things that can be very uncomfortable. But I have had the ability to sit down across from them, and even though some people may feel that people may put themselves in certain positions, we still have to make sure that we do the right thing. So I have found a way to be able to listen to what they have to say, but also allow them to see things the just and right way.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions from Ms. McFadden? Okay, thank you very much. You can stay in the room since you've already heard the question, and I didn't realize y'all had been given one earlier.
Surprise. Thank you.
Where'd Jack go?
Mayor, do you mind passing me that Kleenex?
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Wells. The council members all have a copy of your resume, but if you want to just tell them a little bit about yourself in a few words, and then they've got some questions for you after that. So.
Okay.
And state your name and address for the record, please.
John Wells, 172 Hibiscus Drive, Maumelle, 72113. Moved to Maumelle in 2004 from Hot Springs. Been here since 2004. Live here with my wife for the past 14 years. Just started a job with the Arkansas Municipal League and over their director of motor vehicles and municipal properties in the state. We oversee 499 cities and towns in the state on their vehicles and property. Keeps me busy.
I know we keep you busy, so.
Not too bad, man. Not too bad.
All right. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wells, thank you for applying and for this position. I asked the same two questions, and I'm going to ask of you to Ms. McFadden when she was here. How many, in the last 2 years, how many meetings, civil service meetings, have you attended here in Maumelle?
I've not been in physical attendance. I've watched them all online, the ones that are available online.
Okay. All right. And number two, can you describe the requirements of the position that you're seeking? What will you be doing?
It's overseeing the rules and regulations, implementing rules and regulations for the fair and equitable hiring and promotions and disciplinary actions of uniformed officers in the city of Maumelle.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Timmons?
Hi, thank you for applying.
Well, thank you.
And I've given you the question. So what do you think that your greatest challenge will be while working with the Civil Service Commission?
The officers in uniform, both police and fire, is an amazing group of folks. I mean, they protect us. They go to work every day with a chance of laying their life on the line. And when you have succession planning for replacing a Sam Williams or replacing somebody on the force or promotion, and you've got 3 candidates, and there's not a gnat's hair difference between any of them on paper or when you talk to them, and they're all very qualified candidates, I think the biggest challenge is going to be deciding on which one of those 3 is going to get the opportunity to step up and take the next challenge, next set of responsibilities.
Thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
Based on your resume, Mr. Wells, do you have any experience mitigating conflict between management and employees?
Yes.
And can you speak to that?
For the past 25 years, I've been in a management position, overseeing employee staff of anywhere from 15 down to as few as 3 people. Conflict management and crucial conversations with people and individuals, whether I'm managing them or whether they've had a claim or an unfortunate set of circumstances befall them. There's oftentimes when you've got to mitigate or step in and make a decision, and a fair and equitable decision for all parties are all people that are involved. Sometimes it's not win-win. Sometimes it's win-lose. I mean, you can tell somebody yes and still make them mad. It's the art of telling somebody no, giving them your reasoning, hoping for an understanding. Agreement's great, but understanding is essential. So if you can reach an understanding with anybody you're having a discussion with, then that's your goal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, there any other questions for Mr. Wells? Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor.
Wells,
Thank you
and
for your
thank you
time.
for applying. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to sit back in the audience now, so. All right, all the council members have a ballot sheet in front of them. Please check the name of the person that you wish to serve as your civil service commissioner, and then sign it as legibly as possible, please.
Too late. That's right, you can only check one of the two.
Three McFadden. 4 Wells.
Okay, Mr. Wells has been chosen as the Civil Service Commissioner, so it's 4-3, so it was a very tight vote, so. And Ms. McFadden, we appreciate you applying again, and please consider it next time, too. There'll be more appointments. This one is actually filling a term of someone that stepped down, so there'll be another one next May is when I believe, yeah, May is when the next one would be coming up. And then there's also other opportunities for other commissions and boards. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the next item under new business, we have the Mr. Wells, the Human Resources Director will be contacting you. You'll need to get sworn in and everything like that before you can officially be on the commission. All right. Moving on to the next item, resolution number 2018-25 regarding surplus properties. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas, resolution number 2018-25, a resolution to approve the disposal of city surplus property.
This is the truck that we just replaced with another brush truck. And you can see from the pictures that the dash is out of it, the wiring harness is what was burned up in it and all. But we anticipate the value will be between 100 and 1,000. We do think the engine is still good on it, so we'll think we'll get some salvage value out of the engine and maybe some of the body parts. So, but
I don't know. I think they could still drive this.
you think they can still drive that? Well, they might have to carry a fire extinguisher while they do that, but yeah.
I move that we approve resolution, oh, I guess it has to be read first, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Did you read it?
You read it,
Okay.
yeah.
I move that we approve resolution 2018-25.
Second.
I was busy looking at a picture.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2018-25 regarding surplus property. Is there a discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Moving on to 2018-26 regarding surplus property. Madam City Clerk, if you read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas, resolution number 2018-26, a resolution to approve the disposal of city surplus property.
Motion to approve resolution 2018-26.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-26. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Next item is resolution number 2018-27, approving a conditional use permit. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas, resolution number 2018-27, a resolution granting a conditional use permit to the Unlimited Church to locate a church in a C2 zoning district.
Motion to approve resolution 2018-27.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve resolution 2018-27. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is resolution number 2018-28, amending the 2018 street fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas, resolution number 2018-28, a resolution to amend the 2018 Maumelle Street Fund budget.
Okay, this is the design for the roundabout that the council asked us to go ahead and start the process on. This would be allowing the engineers to get started on the design. This does not authorize any construction. It's simply the design portion of the roundabout. We went through RFQ process, and the staff narrowed it down. We interviewed 4 firms, and this firm was the firm that was picked number 1 out of those interview processes. Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we accept resolution 2018-28.
We have a motion second to approve resolution 2018-28. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. All right, moving on to mayor's comments. All right, first thing I want to tell you is that the Metro Plan Board last Wednesday approved $1 million to go toward the Maumelle interchange. And how that happened was you should have had that too.
Good news, good news.
Oh, and it does say draft on it. No, it says draft on it, but that's because the board hadn't, this came out of the board packet. And so the board had not voted on it yet. So it shouldn't have said draft on the letter that went to Mr. Wiley. But how that occurred, wait a minute, there's another one. All right, maybe I did short you. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Metro Plan gets about $10.5 to $11 million every year to fund projects. Well, they only get 92% of that some years. Well, this year they got 100% of that. And so when it rolled around toward the end of August, they have to allocate those funds. They can't carry a balance over to the next year. They can carry up to $1 million, but they have to spend that money that they've been given in the fiscal year. And so back in April, I wrote a letter to the board and to the president of the board asking that if there were any, after the sales tax election, if there were any unallocated funds, that we would request that they apply some funds to Maumelle, to the interchange project. And then basically what I said, it's important to recognize that the location of the interchange will serve not only Maumelle residents, it will serve residents of North Little Rock and the unincorporated area of Pulaski County. Mm-hmm. And so, and I'm not saying it's because I wrote the letter, but it put it on their radar screen that yes. And so there was $1 million extra, and so they granted it to the Maumelle interchange. So,
I think that's awesome.
Deal.
so hopefully the bids will come in, and then this will just help pay off the bond faster. We won't have to spend as much money to pay off the interchange.
Excellent.
So
Your salary this year.
thank you very much. Sorry.
He wishes he had $1 million.
Oh, yeah. But I thought that was great news, and I wanted to share it with y'all. And now I've lost my agenda.
What's the other Maumelle ASCT construction?
That's the adaptive traffic signals,
Oh,
so.
that was gonna be a question I was gonna ask.
Yeah, so we're still waiting on approval from the highway department to approve the latest plan changes that we've made, so. So it's back to the thing, money's not always free, it just, the process slows down sometimes, so the plans are done, and they're sitting at the highway department waiting to be approved, so that's where we're at on that. And I'd have told you we'd had it in by September, we hadn't even started it yet, so. But hopefully that'll get underway this year is still the plans. But that's what that stands for, Adaptive Signal Control Technology, or whatever it's ACST, or whatever that was.
Synchronizing lights.
Yep. Adaptive Signal Control Technology, that's what that stands for. Something I wish I'd never heard of, but. All right, next item is political campaigning in city offices and facilities. I just need to make a reminder to everybody, and this is, I put it in the packet, it's straight out of the employee handbook. And basically it's titled Participation in Political Campaigns. Excuse me. The basis of this policy relative to employee participation in political campaigns stems from the concept of nonpartisanship in the mayoral form of government. To remain objective, the on-duty functioning of employees should not be identified with any particular candidate. And then under that, there's some bullet points. And one is, no city employee shall campaign during working hours for any candidate at a federal, state, or local level. Candidates for federal, state, and local office shall be discouraged from campaigning in city offices during work hours. However, candidates may greet employees outside various city buildings on their way to and from work for the purpose of distributing campaign literature. Employees are discouraged from wearing campaign buttons for candidates for federal and state offices during working hours. Employees shall be prohibited from wearing or displaying any local city candidate's logo or button during office hours. This is the employee handbook, and you say, well, why are you telling us this? Well, technically, if you're receiving a check from the city of Maumelle, you're considered an employee, a quasi-employee. So also, if you volunteer at a city facility, the members or the people that are in that building don't know sometimes who a volunteer is and who an employee is. So if you're volunteering and you're wearing a candidate's button, then that puts an area, kind of a gray area is what I would call it. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm just saying it's kind of a gray area. So because the volunteers are considered also quasi-employee. This is not legal. I mean, it's not that you'd be doing anything illegal, but you'd be violating employee policy, and it might be an ethics violation, is all I'm going to say about that. So just try to be mindful of the fact of where you're at when you're campaigning and what you're wearing, if you would, please. The other item that I have is Bash on the Boulevard is this Saturday from noon until 8. I gave you a copy of the brochure that went with that, and it goes from noon to 8. It's free. Businesses will be there until 6 p.m., and then when the band starts playing, the businesses are allowed to leave and all that. So if you want to go visit the businesses, you need to be there before 6. And then stick around till 8 o'clock, and they're going to have, as I understand it, the football game, I think, is at 6 or 6:30, and they're going to have that on out there also for the Razorbacks. So, and then the last thing that I've added is everybody should be aware, but the North Rock Times shut down last week. That was their last publication of the North Rock Times, which included our portion of the Maumelle Monitor. On Friday, Arkansas Business did an article talking about The Leader. The Leader is a Jacksonville newspaper currently, but Feldman Publisher, The Leader, based in Jacksonville, is hiring reporters and sales representatives for a push to cover all of Pulaski County, north of the river and south of Sherwood. His goal is to serve some 85,000 new potential readers in the wake of Gatehouse Media's decision to shut down the Times, and he sees additional opportunities to the east in Lonoke County. But another quote by Mr. Feldman is, we hope to cover much of the area north of the river, including North of Rock and Maumelle. It's a pretty big territory with about 85,000 people, and those folks are without a newspaper. So hopefully this will happen. I think that's good news. And I will say also on the Maumelle Monitor side of it, they gave us 12 years worth of Maumelle monitors in a bound book. So they are at City Hall now. Now I think that's about the time Stevens Media purchased the Maumelle monitors, so that's why it went back 12 years. But we do have 12 years worth of newspapers at City Hall now. If you ever have the desire to do some history or go back and look at something, then we should have that. So with that, I will move on to the next item, which is Planning Commission report, and that's Councilmember Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did attend both the sub-meeting and the meeting itself. I have some pictures that I'm going to pass on that were taken by our Director of Public Works, and it has to do with the subject matter. During the main course of the meeting, well, there were two people that were absent. Commissioner Andrews was absent, as well as the City Attorney, Caleb Norris. Routine opening and the procedures. The main subject took place in a variance request regarding easement and public rights right-of-way. This is there at 39 Fairway Woods. It is a POA. I have two people in the audience, both Mr. John Todd and our Director of Public Works, so they may, any question you may want to talk about it. It had to do with the folks, Mr. and Mrs. Kogel, wanted to expand their patio area, and as I understand it, it would possibly encroach on easement area that is where those pipes and things are underneath the area. It's extremely tedious. Mr. Mike Hogan gave a very clear review of the situation, and he said that the easements are precious to his department because the depth of the pipe could become dangerous. He said Fairway Woods is believed the pipe is about 14 feet deep, and that the concern was that the department ever had to repair the deck area existing, along with other factors, could be putting his men in danger. So it was his overall recommendation, as I understand it, that the city not approve that part of the request on the part of Mr. Kogel, Mr. and Mrs. Kogel. They were allowed ultimately to go ahead and repair their deck in its exact track form, footprint as it was called, and but they were denied the original request. So that it was a discussion for engineers, to be for sure. I had little concept of what they were talking about, but it was interesting to say the least. Then the final approval, they did give approval, of course, to the land use for the church that we have just approved as well. And then the meeting quickly wrapped up, and it lasted a little longer than most meetings do. Enjoyed it very much. They gave full consideration to the applicant, however, and went at great length to clarify it.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Holt. Councilmember comments? Councilmember Vapurzian?
Don't want to discuss it tonight, just want to shed light on what you already know. And what is a growing problem is our geese. I don't have an answer, but if you walk in any of our parks, it's a wonderful habitat for them, and it's going to do nothing but grow in population. And like I said, we don't have to talk about it this evening at all, but we'll talk about it at some point. We're going to have to address this sooner or later. This weekend, I saw people stopped on the boulevard and on Odom South, honking their horns.
Oh, they don't care.
No, they're not in a hurry. Yeah.
Like, hey.
We own this place. So, but no discussion tonight. Just wanted to bring it up and say for another time.
Okay.
I want
Councilmember Scott?
No.
At the Bash on the Boulevard this weekend, Friends of Lake Willistine, the Maumelle Chamber, and Maumelle Parks and Rec will be hosting a kids coloring booth. And the reason we're doing that is to try to bring awareness to the Great Maumelle, Arkansas cleanup, which will be September 22nd. And we are looking for able-bodied people to come out and help us clean certain areas of the city. It's a wonderful opportunity to show the city that we love, how much we love it. So stop by the booth, color, play with Legos, and sign up to work in the park. Also, I don't want to put Mr. Hogan on the spot tonight, but I'm hoping that at the next department head meetings, if Mr. Hogan would like to share with us his trail repair plan, that would be appreciated.
Okay. Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Councilmember Williams?
I wanted to remind us all, too, that this Saturday will be the Maumelle Friends of the Animals Puppy Pool Party. It's at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's $10 a dog, and proof of rabies vaccination is required. But you get a free treat bag and a bandana while the supplies last. And we took Mavis last year, and oh my gosh, it is the cutest thing we've ever seen. She can't wait to go. She's already requested that we go again this Saturday. She's hoping that as we walk there, she will see some geese along the way. Take care of that, too.
That's our answer.
That is our answer.
All right. Any other council members' comments? Mr. City Attorney?
Nothing.
Madam City Clerk?
Just a quick reminder, there is still an open position on the Facilities Board. If anyone is interested, you certainly can send them my way with the call, or they can refer to our website. And Councilmember Scott, you can sign me up.
Okay, all right.
That's it.
Okay. If there's no other business coming before the council, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Meeting is adjourned.
No, I just, a lot of combat vets are jumpy. I'm very jumpy.
I don't know why.
Well, I guess